We're still starting this new series of readings. I think 2 weeks ago we had a look at the author's note, and last week somehow we got a narration of the whole story. But now we'll go back to Canto One, the symbol dawn. We had read the first sentence, or second sentence. Perhaps we'll read it again. Let's start with you. I should read. Yes, I will read. So this is Book One, the Book of Beginnings. Canto One, the symbol dawn. It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched, immobile, upon silence marge. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable, in the sombre symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world. A power of fallen, boundless self, awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant naught. As in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown, repeating forever the unconscious act, prolonging forever the unseeing will, cradled the cosmic drowse of ignorant force, whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns and carries our lives in its somnambulist whirl. Athwart the vain, enormous trance of space, its formless stupor without mind or life, a shadow spinning through a soulless void, thrown back once more into unthinking dreams. Earth wheeled, abandoned in the hollow gulfs, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. The impassive skies were neutral, empty, still. Yes, Rosa?
It was the hour before the gods away. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night alone, in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence marge.
Thank you. There's only a couple of difficult words in this passage. No? One is the word foreboding, and the other one is perhaps marge. Anybody can volunteer an explanation of what foreboding means?
I think bonding is like bonding.
No, it's boding. We have a phrase that says something bodes ill, something happens, and it seems to imply that some disaster is coming. There's the word ominous, threatening. No? But foreboding doesn't mean threatening. It means that something or somebody feels threatened. So in this case, it's the huge mind of night, of darkness, that feels threatened by this divine event that is on its way, the waking up of the gods, which is going to bring dawn and light. Foreboding, it is usually a noun. We may feel a sense of foreboding, that something bad is going to happen, or that a storm is going to come. But here, Aurobindo uses it as an adjective. And I've noticed that for translators, this is one of the most difficult words in the poem. They find it difficult to find the right word to, or way to express this adjective here. It's describing the mind of night that is feeling that, oh, something dreadful is coming. And this mind of night, or this night, is alone in her unlit temple of eternity. This whole passage, we will see again and again, there comes the image of a temple, an Indian temple. At night, the gods are put to sleep, and the temple is closed. But this mind of night is as if lying across the threshold to the temple. And she's blocking the way to this waking up of the gods. There she is, stretched out, immobile, not moving, on the edge of silence. It's like the threshold to the temple of eternity, that temple which is dark and still because the gods have not yet woken up. So it's worth keeping in mind that this sentence, this first sentence, the very first line, tells us what time of day it is. This is the hour before dawn, the hour before the gods wake up. In India, the gods wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So this is the time before that waking up of the gods. And everything is dark and still, and it's as if there is this power of darkness which is feeling the approach of the divine event, but wanting to stop it, to prevent it. Would you read?
Almost
Oh, yes.
one felt, opaque, impenetrable. In the sombre symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite, a fathomless zero occupying the world.
Yes. Aurobindo doesn't say it is like this, it's almost like this. One feels almost the abysm, the deep darkness of the unbodied infinite, the infinite which has not manifested itself in any form, the infinite unbodied. And abysm, of course, it's the very deepest part of the sea where no sun reaches. So in this hour before the gods awake, the darkness feels like that, almost like that. Opaque, something that's opaque, you can't see through it. It's cloudy, one can't see clearly. This is opaque and impenetrable. You can't find out what is in that darkness. So that muse of the foreboding mind of night, it is eyeless, it is blind, it can't see. And Sri Aurobindo says that kind of trance of this foreboding mind of night is a symbol, a dark symbol, a sombre symbol. So in that symbol we can almost feel that infinite state of darkness before there is any manifestation. It's as if a huge nothingness is occupying the whole world. a zero, a nothingness. But this zero is immensely deep. A fathom is the measurement that we use. I think it's about 2 meters, or that I think it's still used by sailors to measure how deep the sea is. So if something is fathomless, it means it's so deep that it can't be measured. We can't measure how deep it is. And we use this word not only in the physical sense, but we use it in a psychological sense. If something is fathomless, we can't fathom it, we can't find out where its limits are, we can't understand it properly. So this seems to be a very, very deep, immeasurable nothingness. Martin? Sorry, you've got a question, Sivan?
No, I got it.
Oh, no, I'm reading, asking you to read as I can see you. So the next one I can see is Martin.
Power of fallen, boundless self, awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality that longed to reach its end in vacant nought.
Yes. So there's some kind of being there. Perhaps this night, this power of night. And Sri Aurobindo says this power is a power of self. It is a being, but it's a power of fallen self. It has fallen from its original consciousness. But it's a self which is boundless. It has no limits, like this unbodied infinite. This power of fallen, boundless self is already awake. Before the gods awake, it is awake. And it is awake between the first and the last nothingness. If we think of our universe, even though it's boundless, still it's not infinite. So there was a before this universe began, and there will be a time after. So that nothingness that we know nothing about before the manifestation, and the nothingness afterwards. In between, there is this power of fallen, boundless self, and it's awake. But it's remembering that nothingness from which it was born. Recalling means remembering the tenebrous womb. The womb is where the child is born from. And this is a womb of darkness, of shadows, tenebrous. It has been born from that original nothingness, and it will go back to the last nothingness. But now it is awake. But it doesn't want to be awake. It remembers that dark womb of nothingness from which it came, and it wants to go back there. It turns away from the insoluble mystery of birth. Why was it born? Why does it have to exist? It doesn't know, but it doesn't like it. The insoluble mystery of birth. And then this tardy process. Something that is tardy is something that takes too long. It's too slow. This process of being born and living and dying and maybe being born again. That is all too much effort for it. It longs to reach its end, to be extinguished, to cease to exist. It wants to go back to a state of empty nothingness, vacant naught.
This is not the nirvana state, no?
Sorry?
This doesn't denote the nirvana state, no.
Perhaps for some people that's how they think of nirvana. That's what they want to reach, a state of not existing anymore, of loss of identity. You can also say it's a kind of death wish, but in a much less absolute way. We all experience it sometimes, I think, when we have been deep asleep and we start to wake up and we think, oh, have I got to face another day? Have I got to face the insoluble mystery of life, and this tardy process of being born, of life. And we want to go back to sleep again. It's something like that. And there's this foreboding that, oh, now I'm going to have to wake up. Everything's going to wake up. We're going to have to face this whole process again. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just sink back into total, comfortable unconsciousness? I think the psychologists, they speak about something called the death wish. It's something like that. When life is just too much, there's something in us which wants to simply not exist anymore.
Or maybe, I don't know, I see it's the opposite. Maybe it's the wish to be one, without any identified, or to be one without a name. Or
yes, but here it definitely says not one,
yeah,
but
not.
not.
No, when she speaks about nirvana.
Yes,
Nirvana
so we're...
is different and fit the sadness that we talk
Yes.
about.
But we don't know what people are aspiring for when they aspire for nirvana. Perhaps for some people it's like that. The extinction of all this useless, futile experience and individuality. But anyway, we shouldn't really bring nirvana in here. Is it your turn to read, Stefan? I think so, yes. Please, yes, would you read?
And use featureless semblance of the unknown, as in a dark beginning of all things, and use featureless semblance of the unknown, repeating forever the unconsciousness, and prolonging forever the unseen will, rather the cosmic rose of ignorant force, whose mood creative slumber timeless descends and carries our lives in its somnambulist thrill.
You know what is a somnambulist? Somebody who walks in their sleep or moves about and is active in their sleep. So we'll see how that fits in here. So Aurobindo says, this time now, this hour before the dawn, it's so dark, it's so opaque and impenetrable. It's almost like the beginning of the universe, before anything happened. No? as in a dark beginning of all things. There's something which is repeating an unconscious action over and over again. Some automatic movement that's going on, being repeated. And that repeated unconscious action is prolonging, continuing forever. There seems to be no end to it. To some unseeing will, some blind will that has set that motion in movement and hasn't stopped it. No? So this, he says, is something which seems to be like the unknown. It seems to be a semblance of the unknown with a capital U. So in spiritual terms, this means some aspect of reality that can never be grasped or understood by us. Or at least by our minds. So there's that semblance of the unknown. It is silent, mute. It doesn't speak or express itself. And it doesn't have any features. We can't distinguish any qualities or forms in it. In that darkness, which is like the darkness before anything existed, something is going on. There is a movement. So it's as if that mute, featureless semblance of the unknown is perhaps the womb from which the mind of night was born. Here it's described as a mother cradling, holding in her arms the cosmic drowse of ignorant force. Drowse is a sleepy state where you're not really conscious. No? It's as if the whole universe is in this sleepy state. And what is the universe? It's a mass of ignorant force, of energy that doesn't know anything clearly. But that ignorant force, which is being cradled there, although it's asleep, its slumber, its sleep, is creative. Something is moving its sleep, and that something in that sleep kindles the suns. It lights up all the stars in the universe. And that same ignorant force is carrying our lives. It's going round and round in its sleep, repeating forever the unseeing act, prolonging forever the unseeing will. It's an ignorant force, but it's carrying everything in the universe with it, and it is carrying us too, our lives. Patricia.
Athwart the vain, enormous trance of space, its formless stupor without mind or life, a shadow spinning through a soulless void, thrown back once more into unthinking dreams, earth wheeled, abandoned in the hollow gulfs, forgetful of her spirit and her fate.
So this is about the earth. It's as if Sri Aurobindo has taken us out into the universe somewhere, into this darkness before anything began. And now he's focusing on this little planet Earth. She's passing across, athwart means across, this vast space, which seems to be in a trance-like state. It seems to be some enormous space which doesn't have any meaning or significance or purpose. It's vain, useless. Space seems to be in a state of stupor. Stupor is that kind of heavy, unconscious state you are in if you are very sick or if you've been given too many drugs and you can't wake up. Stupor. So this formless stupor of space, which has no mind in it, no life in it. Earth is just like a shadow, a dark shadow, spinning around through this emptiness, this soulless emptiness. She's been, he says, thrown back once more into unthinking dreams. So he suggests, as we got the suggestion earlier, that this is a cyclic process. This is the cyclic process of when the gods are awake and when they're asleep. And when they're asleep, Earth too is thrown back into this state of unthinking dreams. She wheeled, she's circling, abandoned. The gods have forgotten about her. She has forgotten about herself. There's nothing and no one to help and protect her. There she is, just wheeling around in these vast empty spaces, these gulfs of space that are hollow, empty. They have nothing in them. And Earth has forgotten her spirit, her inner truth and consciousness. And she's forgotten about her fate, her destiny. Just one line, please, Subhu.
The impassive sky.
Sorry, let Subhu read it.
The impassive skies were natural empty state.
Neutral. Neutral. So a neutral color is a color that's almost not a color. Well, what have we got? Maybe Samadashan's shirt is a kind of neutral color, off-white. But I think this neutral is a kind of dark grey. Empty. Still. When we think of Earth, Earth immediately makes us think of sky. So, but the skies are empty. There's no color in them. Nothing is moving. He says the skies are impassive. They don't care. They are indifferent. They don't care about the earth. She's been abandoned. The skies, the heavens, no. Let's pause there. Anybody has anything to ask about this page that we just read?
Yeah, Shraddhavan, I want to tell you about 17, a nude, featureless semblance of the unknown. Unknown is a level, is a high level for me.
We could say It's a state of existence which is beyond the reach of our knowledge.
I read something about unknown. This one very
Yes. Of course, the unknown needn't be unknowable, but perhaps here he's speaking about that unknown state or reality which we don't know anything about. Yeah.
He's saying a semblance of the unknown.
Yes. Yes. So this whole passage is a kind of simile. He doesn't say it is this. He keeps saying it is like this. Almost one felt. No? This is as if, no? As in a dark beginning of things. So that impenetrable, opaque darkness before the dawn is something like, it is a somber symbol of the state before anything existed. But it isn't actually that, it's only like that. It's only an image of that.
Shraddhavan, this is only my sharing. Aurobindo has got to bring down the mind of light
Yes,
to the earth.
yes,
This particular second line sentence, across the path of the divine event, taking it that as a divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, Auroville, unlit temple of eternity. They stretch immobile upon silence.
yes,
I imagine that particular
yes. And so that is foreboding. It is feeling a sense of being threatened. Oh, the mind of light is coming. Light is coming. Here, this being that I am, this is night. And now what will happen to me? I will be dissolved. No? And I don't want that light. So there's this kind of resistance and wishing to go back into a state of complete darkness, that womb where it will be safe. No? So this is all one long description, the state which Aurobindo starts his poem with, this darkness. So now there's a very slight movement, and I think this happens actually physically in the darkness before the dawn. Before any light comes, there's some kind of little movement of the air. People who are familiar with living outdoors and knowing about weather and times of day, they recognize that little stirring of the air which promises that the dawn is going to come. So something like that happens. Bhavana.
When something in the inscrutable darkness stirs, a nameless murmur, an untouched idea, insistent, dissatisfied, without an aim, something that wished but knew not how to be, teased the inconscient to wake ignorance.
There's a little movement. Something stirred in that darkness, inscrutable darkness that we can't read, we can't begin to understand or recognize it. No? It's just a little movement, a movement we can't even give a name to. It's like an unthought idea. I don't know whether you can recognize that feeling of a kind of little movement before an idea forms. Some little movement in the consciousness or in the brain. An idea is coming, but that it hasn't been thought, it hasn't been given a form or a significance. But it is insistent, it's pressing, it's insisting, it's dissatisfied, but it doesn't know what it wants. It doesn't have an aim that it's pressing for. It wants to be, it wants to exist, it wants to have a form, but it doesn't know how to do that. So that very, very beginning of something, he says, teased the inconscient to wake ignorance. Teasing is like tickling. If you, our great-grandmothers used to go out into the countryside and collect wisps of wool from the hedgerows. And then they would want to spin that wool into threads. But first they would have to sort it out. There was a teasing process of sorting it out. And that's a kind of movement like with a comb, perhaps. A comb going through hair that's very tangled. But we also use this word of children. Children tease each other. You know, they do small things deliberately to annoy their brothers and sisters or families. They want to arouse them. So I think it is in this sense, this insistent something that wants to exist, to have a form, is poking at, arousing the inconscient, the total lack or withdrawal of consciousness. And the effect of that teasing is to wake up ignorance. The thing about ignorance is that there's a kind of half knowledge. It's not inconscient. In her comments, the mother has said that this little movement, which she said preceded even form, which is before life and thought, it doesn't know how to be. She says this little movement in the darkness is like the beginning of aspiration. It doesn't know what it wants, but that it's a movement towards something. Would you read, Ma? Would you read?
Through that come and let a quivering trust and gave room for unaltered and unfilled. At peace in its subconscient moonless cave, to raise its head and look for absent light, straining closed eyes of vanished memory, like one who
Searches
for a
bygone
self, and only meets the crops of his desire.
Yes. A throw, it's another word for a little movement, particularly a little involuntary movement. Suddenly you move, you don't know why. So it came in the darkness, that little movement, and it stops, but it leaves behind it a little quivering trace, a small vibration that's been left by that throw. And that quivering trace, it's as if it opens up something in the darkness to give some space, some room for something to be felt, something that's been there forgotten, an old, tired want, a desire, an unfilled desire, an unfulfilled desire that's been lying there asleep, at peace in this dark cave of the subconscious, a cave with no light, no moon, nothing, no? But that desire, that old, tired want, lifts up its head and starts looking for light. There isn't any light there. The light is absent, but it's looking for it. And it wouldn't see it even if it were there, because its eyes are closed. What it's straining for is some memory, but it can't even remember what that memory is that it's straining for. It's like someone who starts searching for something that he has been, or someone that he has been in the past, bygone. We say, let bygones be bygones. Those things that have happened, let us forget about them. Something that is bygone, it has gone by. So this is like somebody searching for a bygone self, and he doesn't find that bygone self. He only finds a kind of corpse, a dead body of it, of what he wants, his desire. I think this passage, it continues for another 5 pages, is something absolutely unique in literature. It carries within itself, packed within it, so many different layers of meaning and suggestion. The most obvious meaning is this darkest hour before the dawn, and it's going to give way, light will come. But it's a symbol dawn. This is not only about the physical dawn, it is about the physical dawn, but it's also about every possible kind of psychological dawn. If we've been unconscious and some consciousness begins to wake up in us. Or, what is very interesting about this last sentence that we read, maybe it's what it is like for a soul that has gone through the death process and is in that state of internatal sleep, which Aurobindo describes later in the poem, in the world soul, where the beings who once wore bodies on earth, they are in a deep sleep. And in their sleep, they are assimilating what has happened in their past lives, and they are preparing what they will choose to do in the next life. Excuse me. It's maybe like a soul waking up. It's been in a state of complete darkness, abandoned. But now something has happened and it begins to want to wake up. And so there's vanished memory. It doesn't remember what it has been in the past. But somehow there's this feeling that there must be a memory somewhere, if only I could remember.
But Shraddhavan is a memory from the past or present?
Well, I don't want to say that,
Okay. No.
because these are only suggestions.
Okay.
But there are so many layers of suggestions in this passage that I think we can read it over and over again, and each time it might have a different meaning for us. So now what we do, we just look at the meanings of the words and the structures of the sentences. But there's so much more here, the suggestions, the sound suggestions, the images, that this can be really a very deep meditation, and perhaps for each person the experience that meditation brings will be a different experience. Or even to one person at different times it can bring a different experience. It's something unique in poetry.
But it's very interesting from my small experience. Closed eyes, for example, I am in my bathroom and suddenly my eyes close very, very, very deep. But I don't remember anything. Nothing. And it's not only in the bathroom, but sometimes stop and eyes is no, it just is, for that I have this question. But Kiribai tell me 2013, now your karma is finished, but the memory.
Some
don't
memory.
tell me the past or the present, but
So I think we will stop there for today.
Here, and after line 27, when we started talking about earth, across the vein in Namas, no?
Yes.
It's about earth.
This is about Earth, yeah.
Earth. And then this darkness is connected with that, with earth. And then the stirring is come inside the earth. Is it so?
You see, if we really think literally, the earth is never completely dark like this. One side is always full of light. Yeah? So a disciple has written to Aurobindo like that. No? And Aurobindo said, come, try to see what I am doing. I'm talking about a psychological state which is very real to a person who is in it. A person who is in this state of deep darkness is not thinking that, oh, the sun is shining somewhere else. No? But even a person who is in such a deep, dark state may experience a tiny little movement of encouraging, of aspiration to wake up and to recover something he doesn't even know what it is. The memory has vanished. You know? So this is a psychological experience. And we can maybe, well, it depends on ourselves and where we are at the moment.
My question is why the earth is being brought there, because he was talking about
well, first it was like the whole universe is in darkness. He's bringing us to earth because he's going to tell us about the dawn coming to the earth. And this is going to be the dawn of the day when Shraddhavan must die. So it's also like we could imagine a kind of film, no? That we're out in outer space in total blackness, and then he zooms us in and we see the shadow spinning in the void that is the space around the earth. No? And perhaps on the earth, in the darkness of the earth, there's an individual consciousness that's in that complete darkness and which can begin to wake up.
Somewhere else it is told, Bhavan, no? Only in earth the possibility of this psychic being and waking up is possible. In no other words.
Yeah, and this is a poem about the earth. The whole poem is about the earth, really. Yes. Yes, Alice.
If we are alert enough and awake enough, in that semblance moment, instant, that little hint, some feeling of hope, tiny little bit of hope comes and we're not exactly, what's causing this? But we like it.
Yeah.
Well, we may like it or we may resist it.
That's true.
Yes. So he's going to, in the next pages, he's going to examine these different sides of this experience.
Yeah.
But I think now we should just read this first passage together.
It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched, immobile, upon silence marge. Almost one felt, opaque, impenetrable, in the sombre symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world. A power of fallen, boundless self, awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant naught. As in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown, repeating forever the unconscious act, prolonging forever the unseeing will, cradled the cosmic drowse of ignorant force, whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns and carries our lives in its somnambulist whirl. Athwart the vain, enormous trance of space, its formless stupor, without mind or life, a shadow spinning through a soulless void, thrown back once more into unthinking dreams. Earth wheeled, abandoned in the hollow gulfs, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. The impassive skies were neutral, empty, still. Then something in the inscrutable darkness stirred, a nameless movement, an unthought idea, insistent, dissatisfied, without an aim, something that wished but knew not how to be, teased the inconscient to wake ignorance. A throe that came and left a quivering trace, gave room for an old tired want unfilled, at peace in its subconscient moonless cave, to raise its head and look for absent light, straining closed eyes of vanished memory, like one who searches for a bygone self and only meets the corpse of his desire.